Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcasts. You're watching on YouTube. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media, AMP-IRE. Always much appreciated when you tune in. And don't forget, you can always read my work on ESPN.com. Today, I'm joined by longtime former NFL coach, Marty Mornhinweg, because I wanted to get an outside perspective on Sam Howell. I wanted someone from a national perspective, someone who's been around the game. This guy's been around with a number of teams, a number of young quarterbacks, from Brett Favre. He was around Steve Young, Jeff Garcia when he was young, Geno Smith, all sorts of guys, and I'm leaving guys out because he's coached Lamar Jackson, for goodness sake. So he's coached a lot of guys. He likes what he's seen from Sam Howell. So wanted to bring him on to talk about him. He writes for, he's, again, former head coach, former offensive coordinator. So, he's done a lot of things. And I think that's, I said, he brings good perspective. He also writes for something called the 33rd Team. If you haven't checked him out, there's a lot of former executives, coaches who write for them and provide insight. And so I think it's a worthwhile read wherever you can get it. So that's why I want to bring him on. But before I get to my conversation with Marty, just wanted to go over a couple things with you. One, don't forget, I'll have my keys and a prediction to the game. Usually comes out either Friday night, Saturday morning. So that'll be up. And then after the game, I'll be back wrapping up the Commanders-Seahawks game. And so that's that. So a couple of things from being out there on Wednesday. The injury report, Curtis Samuel was limited. He has that toe injury. Kendall Fuller and John Allen did not practice, veteran days off. Jahan Dotson did not practice, personal reasons. He's expected back on Thursday. John Bates was there. And I say that because his wife had their baby, a little girl, on Monday. Everybody's doing well. And I think he's looking forward. He said he told me today he hadn't slept at home since Friday. So congrats to them. He seemed to be in a very good mood, obviously very happy. So that's a good thing. Also, so we talked to Sam Howell and Ron Rivera today at the podium. One of the things that Howell talked about, and I thought this was interesting, because he was asked about the performance of the offensive line, and he talked about, the line doing better. He's getting the ball out faster. Bieniemy calling the plays well. And he said he thinks they're now finding their identity as an offense. And I know a lot of people are waiting for them to run the ball more. Not going to happen. They can run the ball better, and I think they could run it a little bit more. And I think being more effective running the ball is kind of what I've always pushed for lately, because this is what Bieniemy does. And so, so if you run the ball better, it sets everything else up. But I would also point out, for as pass happy as they were last week, they held the ball for 37 minutes. So one of the things, and I asked Ron Rivera about this early in the year, because every time we'd see games like this in the past, he would say, need to go back to what we do, we need to go back to this, to running the ball, whatever. And the next week, it was always a message to Scott Turner. The next week, they'd run the ball more. And I asked him, earlier this year, you're not saying that now. Why is that? And he likes what Bieniemy's doing as far as where the offense is taken. The other part of it is, because he even said, because he coached with Andy Reid in Philadelphia, he knows how Reid approaches it, and Bieniemy is an absolute disciple of that offense. I think the other part of that is, if you remember, one of the big phrases he would talk about during the preseason was, or early in the summertime after they hired Bieniemy, was being comfortable with the uncomfortable. This is uncomfortable, I think, for Rivera to be part of that kind of offense, but he's getting a comfort level, I believe, with it. And listen, if it starts to work, and the last couple of games, they really moved the ball well, then, it's easier to become comfortable with that. So I think it's all part of that philosophy, and you went out, you rolled the dice. I shouldn't say roll the dice. You went out and you hired Bieniemy, and you gave him the assistant head coach title. You put a lot on, you've given him, Bieniemy's had more power than any assistant coach that I've covered, I'd say maybe Marvin Lewis with Steve Spurrier, but I think that was because Spurrier didn't know what he was doing. So Lewis had to take control. This was given to Bieniemy. They are doing so many things that are Bieniemy related or suggested, or his ideas, that this is another one of them. So I think if you're going to do that, you're going to play it out and you're going to sink or swim with that. And that's so, and offensively, they're starting to swim a little bit better the last few weeks. Defensively, man, they've got a ways to go. And that's my biggest concern for them moving forward, is can that group shore up those details that they consistently have been missing or performing poorly this season. And so I think you'd have to say this offense is now going to have to carry this team down the stretch. You need the defense to get to at least improve, just improve. If you can do that, then maybe the offense can improve enough where you can threaten and contend for the playoffs. But if they don't get there, you're going to lose in Seattle, and then you're going to come back, you beat the Giants, you're going to lose in Dallas, and you're going to kind of slog your way to 7 wins. It's not what this team should be doing. So that would be a definite underachievement, and that wouldn't be good for anybody. So anyways, but as far as the offense goes, starting to put things together, I think this would be another good test for them. I don't think Seattle has this great defense, but it's certainly going to be a tough place to play. And I think it's a challenge. So, but if they want to get to the play, if they want to start talking playoffs, you got to win a game like this realistically first, because otherwise you're hanging around, but you're really not a big threat. But then you look at the NFC and who is? So, there's going to be a spot open for somebody. Also, I talked about the sacks on the film review session yesterday. And I think on the first sack, one of the things I just kind of wanted to update something that I had said, and I didn't think the first one was really on Sam Howell. However, this is how it should have played out. When they go back and look at it, this is the teaching point for this group. First of all, the Patriots corner who blitzed was outside. It was a tight end. And they said in that situation, they knew that corner was going to blitz. So you want to alter your protection. That's one thing. Maybe because they were not sliding that way. So slide the protection that way to pick that up, because you knew that, because that's what they were taught. And then the other part is Gibson is crossing Howell's face to go out on his route, and he goes between Leno and the guard. Leno's engaged outside. They would tell Gibson next time, go outside the tackle, because then it forces the defensive end to stay inside, and it gives Leno a better chance to win on that pass set. And then for Howell, it's more either, get rid of the ball, or but you can't move back and drift left, knowing the situation. So sometimes that's where, you've either got to step up or just get rid of it, because but it seemed like that surprised them. But I think, like I said, in hindsight, this is how they wish they had handled it. And so they all could have handled it a little bit better. Howell was put in a tough spot, but when you're put in a tough spot, how can you then overcome it? That's the point for him. Not that it was necessarily his fault, but the protection starts with the protection sliding that way, Gibson going outside, Howell handling it and not drifting back, kind of moving back and drifting a little bit to the left to get out, but that knowing that end has a good angle off the tackle. So, and that's also something, that's what I heard out there. And also, you listen to Logan Paulson on the Take Command podcast, he talked about that as well. And that was his take. And so, and that's when I asked some people today, that's, that was that's certainly part of what they said. And then the other parts that I learned too. So anyways, wanted to update you on that, because I kind of like to, if I say one thing and I find out something that's a little bit different or a little bit more to it, I like to give that to you just so you get as much information as possible, etc. So anyway, that's it from, last thing I want to talk about. So just from a practice standpoint, on Wednesdays now, they're really kind of starting to taper down. And it's more of it's certainly not a walkthrough, but you're not going out there in helmets. You're in your shirts and shorts, right? Or whatever it is in November. And it's going to be warm on Thursday. But anyway, so that's what they're in. It's not a strenuous practice. It's as much a mental practice for them. And I think a lot of it has to do with, there's a couple things. One, they work longer and harder than they have in a long time. So I think, and there's some guys who I know have not liked that Tuesday, having that Tuesday as a day where they have to go out there and work. They've always preferred Monday, because you're going in, you're going in on Monday anyway. You get your treatment, you get the meetings, you do all that. And then Tuesday's your day off. So you can spend it, doing charity stuff, doing whatever. And even a lot of guys who they had the Tuesday off this week. Well, a lot of guys go in and either get treatment or go in and watch film for a little bit, but they're not there all day. So, but the thing is, like, and when you don't have a bye until early December, you need to start finding ways to keep their bodies fresh. And the whole goal is to be playing well down the stretch. Will this help them? We'll see. Will they stay fresh? We'll see. But there are times where I know that some guys were, I think, ready for something like this, and this is the first time. This week was the first time they had their victory, I guess, Victory Tuesday. It used to be Victory Monday, where they get Monday off. Now they got Tuesday off. It's the first one they've had. This is late in the season for those kind of Victory Monday/Tuesday rewards that pretty much every team gets at some point. These guys haven't had one. Now, the more games you win, the more likely you get them. But that's aside from that. This is still a little bit late in the year for their first one to have that. And I think it comes at a good time when you're going to be going down to the West Coast. I think it's good to get your bodies fresh. And again, with that having a late bye, I think you have to look for ways to help with that. And they do track these players with their GPS numbers, so they can tell when they need a break and when they don't, just based on how they're tracking the GPS. Anyways, all right, that's enough for me. Let's get to my conversation with former NFL coach and former longtime NFL coach and someone who still watches all these games a lot and knows how to analyze, Marty Mornhinweg.
In sports, the scoreboard doesn't tell the full story, but Netflix does. Stories about dads who happen to be world-class quarterbacks and a battle for the heart, soul, and direction of the multi-billion-dollar business of F1. Whether you're a diehard fan or you're brand new, Netflix has the stories for every type of fan. You can watch these incredible sports stories like Quarterback, F1 Drive to Survive, Untold, and many more now on Netflix.
Mark your calendars, because November 11th is going to be huge. Yuri Prochazka versus Alex Pereira will face off during UFC 295, but only one fighter will leave with the belt. Secure your victory with unbeatable offers on DraftKings Sportsbook. New customers, strike now to get $200 instantly in bonus bets when you bet $5. Get in on the UFC 295 action with DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of UFC. Download the app now and use code KEIM, K-E-I-M. New customers get $200 instantly in bonus bets when you bet $5. That's code KEIM. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, 21 plus age varies by jurisdiction, void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See sportsbook.draftkings.com/MMA. Terms for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms and responsible gaming resources.
So what I wanted to ask you about is, I know you had written something in the offseason about Eric Bieniemy needing to tailor around Sam Howell. And I remember at that time thinking, that you obviously had some insight into how you might be able to use this guy, but I'm curious how much you've been able to watch him this season and any thoughts you may have on him.
Well, I've watched him this season. I really like how Eric Bieniemy operates as well. I think playing quarterback for a guy like Eric can take you to a little bit better heights and higher heights just because of his philosophy. And this is what I've seen from Sam Howell with the Washington Commanders. Is he, for the coaches, for his teammates, and for the fans, he's given them, John, some hope.
Yeah.
He's given them a little confidence. Why? Because he makes typically pretty good decisions for a man that has started maybe just a little bit more than single digits in the National Football League, right? Yep. Well, he makes pretty good decisions. He's got pretty good accuracy. He understands timing for the most part, right? Because he's gaining experience. And then he's got some gut instincts that can take you far as well. So that's what I've seen with Sam Howell. Now, this is going to be fascinating, John, down the stretch for the Commanders, because it looks to me like new ownership. They're in a little bit of the twilight zone.
Right.
A lot of unknowns. Ron Rivera, a heck of a coach. Is he going to be there?
Right.
Eric Bieniemy, who looks like he works really well with Sam Howell, is he going to be there? And then you've got some of the players thinking, "Oh, am I going to be here?" Right? It filters down just a little bit. So it's going to be fascinating to see. Can the Washington Commanders make a run, which I think is possible? And then is Sam Howell going to be the man in charge at the quarterback position for the future of the Washington Commanders? It's going to be fascinating.
Oh, I agree. And I want to get to that in a minute, but I want to stick to what he's doing right now. And so, when you look at him, are there moments or anything that sticks out to you? Or is there an attribute of his game that you say he's further ahead here than where a lot of young guys are?
Okay. Every quarterback is different, John.
Correct.
Right? Everyone is different, even if they're in the same style or same mold. They have different strengths. They have different weaknesses. They also become a heck of a quarterback at a different rate, right? I remember Brett Favre. It was probably, year 3, year 4, somewhere in there in the NFL. Remember, he had his rookie season in Atlanta. And then when he hit it, did he ever hit it? But before that, the Green Bay Packers were something like 8-8, 8-8, 8-8. And then he becomes the 3-time back-to-back-to-back MVP of the league. So I can see Sam Howell gaining experience. They've got to figure out as a quarterback, unless you're on just a fantastic team with an excellent defense, a la Ben Roethlisberger, right? Or Joe Flacco. It's very difficult to play quarterback at that high level, let's say a top 8 or top 10 in the NFL. Very difficult to do on a mediocre team, or certainly a team that's struggling like some of these other fellows are on. So I see Sam Howell right there. He's gaining experience. He's figuring out what he can get away with and what he can't. He's taken too many sacks. You could say the Commanders have given up too many sacks. But 2/3 of all sacks in the National Football League, to me, are typically, it's 2/3 are quarterback related. Meaning, on 2/3 of those sacks, the quarterback could have done something to alleviate a sack. So that's where Sam Howell's at. But I do think he's got good instincts. He typically, now it's got to be more consistent. He with his decision making, his accuracy, and his timing. So he's right there. Is he going to be the man in charge for the future of the Commanders at the quarterback spot?
So, and like you said, you've been around young quarterbacks. Brett Favre, you were with Geno Smith, you with other young quarterbacks. What things do you look for, and how long does it usually take to tell where this guy is headed or what level quarterback he can play in the NFL?
Yeah, you just mentioned a couple. I had Garcia as our rookie, Jalen Hurts, Nick Foles, Geno, Lamar. I mean, And okay, look, within 2 or 3 days, you think you know, right? You think you know. Why? Because there's 3 things that go on, right? The wow factor, right? Michael Vick has wow factor, Lamar, other positions, Deshaun Jackson. Within 2 or 3 days, there's going to be several like whoa and wows, right? That's one way. The other way is that high level of play, the high level of play on a really consistent basis. So that takes time.
Right.
We talked about Favre, right? Sometimes that takes time to show that. And then the toughness part. Every great quarterback that I've ever coached is tougher than nails, both physically, but especially mentally. So that takes time as well. So those 2 of those 3 things takes a little time to figure out. But within the first 3 days, John, you know that whether or not this young man has some special skills or not.
Sure. And I think with his toughness, he's shown like, and when you talk about like mental toughness, so when I've seen from him is, responds well to negative situations or plays or bad games or bad week or whatever, and he's not afraid. That's mentally tough. Physically, he's not afraid to turn it up on 3rd and 10 if he needs 2 more yards. So what is it that when you talk about the mental toughness, what is it that you look for? And maybe is there anything that you've seen from Howell watching him that shows that?
Well, Sam Howell now, from everything I can gather, this guy is a humble guy. Mm-hmm. He in public, right? He's very confident in private. And you hit the nail on the head in one aspect of the mental toughness that I'm talking about, right? You always wonder what a young man is going to do when things go bad, which they likely will.
Oh, yeah.
A talented young player on a maybe average, maybe a little bit better than average team, right? All right. But then on the other end, which is likely as well, when things go really well, because he's a talented young man on a decent team, right? There's going to be segments of that first few years where things go really well. How is he going to handle that as well? And can he keep his consistency? There's been dozens and dozens, probably hundreds of quarterbacks through the NFL that have strung together 2, 3, 4, 5 games, but they just can't keep it together. As a quarterback, John, you're evaluated when you're all said and done on how many wins you established, how many championships you won, how many times you got your team into the end zone, back to back to back over many, many years. That's how you're evaluated as a quarterback. So there's only a select few, John, that can lead their team. That's the other thing, the leadership. Once Sam Howell becomes really comfortable with Eric Bieniemy's system, he's figured out what he can get away with and what he can't. Now here comes his leadership abilities. And everybody's different, right, on how they lead. They're from all different parts of the country. They grew up different ways. They speak differently. Their sense of humor is different. They think about the game differently. So then you'll see Sam Howell's leadership ability. But I think he's done an excellent job of when things go really well to stay even keel, right? What's next? What's the next mission? That should be the thought process. And when things go bad, which they have, he's laid a couple eggs, right? When things go bad, what's the next mission? What did I learn? And let's put that to use and let's go forward. It looks like he's really mentally tough that way, John.
Yes, I would agree with that. And you brought up earlier about Eric Bieniemy's system for him, and you thought it was a good fit. Why is that? What is it? Is it because he likes to throw the ball a lot and it gets to put him in situations, or what is it that why do you feel that way?
I've been around Eric just a little bit, enough to know his philosophy, right? All right. And then Eric, excuse me, Eric's a tough dude, right? Yeah. He puts it on the table. He's not going to pull any punches, right? The expectations are very, very high, and Eric will not bend on those expectations. No matter what just happened in the past, those expectations are high. Players thrive in a well thought out, well-organized, disciplined system that has high expectations. Players thrive in that environment, and I know Eric is trying and has established just a little bit of that process.
And then when you look at with the sacks, you brought the sacks, and he's obviously the last 2 weeks has been better with that. Yeah. Previously, there were a lot. And so in your experience, you've had guys that have been sacked a lot. You've had guys that haven't. You've had guys that improved throughout that. What's the key for when you, because obviously, you can build a stronger wall around him. Okay. But for Sam, for the quarterback, what's the key to help improve in that area?
Experience for his style, because he moves and grooves pretty well. He even has a little running ability. You mentioned that on this segment. So experience goes a long way. Now, I will tell you, some guys at the skill position, and certainly the quarterback position, they just take care of the ball a little bit better than others. They can get a little bit better at it. but it's ingrained in him. It looks like he takes care of the ball reasonably well, and he'll get better and better at that. Sacks are the same way. Some quarterbacks, they just get sacked more than others. Oh my gosh, and they'll get better at it, but it's still in him. Right. Sam Howell, I don't think is in that mold of he just takes more sacks than others. Excuse me. So he'll learn when to throw the football away, what he can get away with when he's moving and grooving and actually scrambling and moving within the pocket, all those things. And I know Eric, the enemy, has drills for the quarterbacks within their movement. So when a quarterback moves, he still has to retain a great amount of discipline. And there's drills for that. There's emphasis. There's discussions. You have to drill it on the field, and you have to take a couple plays from 7-on-7 and team. If you've got a really mobile quarterback, and practice those movement type of drills within the team. You do it individually, you do it as a unit, but then you must take a couple plays every now and then to drill those things in practice with the whole football team.
And, it's funny because like one of the things they talk about is like, sometimes he wants to make that big play. His eyes stay downfield, right? The pressure doesn't get to him, but he's trying to make that big play. And so sometimes you hold the ball a little bit longer. How do you try to coach that out of somebody, or do you try to build a stronger wall to give them that extra time to hit that big play? How do you balance that?
Yeah, it depends on the play and on the protection, right? So there are some protections that I would like to see the quarterback keep his depth, and he can pump the ball a couple of times. Let's say 7-man protection with double chips, all those things, right? But there are others, 5-man protection, 6-man protection, that timing, right? It's almost like an artist painting a picture. Some of those, when a quarterback figures out what he can get away with and what he can't, and he utilizes that experience in games, it looks like an artist painting a picture. So Sam is right there with his sort of matriculation in Eric Bieniemy's thought process, his philosophy, and sometimes it's a seamless transition into the NFL. Typically, like we talked about, you have to be on a really good team for it to look like that. Other times, it takes a little time to gain that experience and put it to use.
Just a couple more things here, and I appreciate your time. So when you're looking at him, and when you've been around young quarterbacks who start off a certain way, what's the key to taking that next step?
When you've got a rookie that's really talented, which I've been fortunate to have really more than a handful, right? And you're forced or you choose to play them. Now, with my experience with a rookie, it's more mid-season, right? And on, that young man may be ready as long as you play directly to that young man's strengths. Forget about what he can't do. Focus on all of those things, and you wouldn't have drafted him. He wouldn't be on your team if he can't do some things really, really well at a high level. So play directly to his strengths, and then you try to stay one step ahead of your opponent schematically. Because if you play 2 games in a row directly to his strengths and that's it, that third game, maybe fourth game, you're going to get slapped. You're going to get slapped around like a little kid. So you've got to schematically stay one step ahead. And then all of the things that he must improve upon, you start that immediately in the off season throughout the OTAs into the next training camp. And then he may have a few more strengths in that second year. That's where Sam is, just about right there, right? And then in the third and fourth year, that young, talented quarterback should be playing very close to his height, to his cap.
And for people listening, you check out Marty and the others' work on the 33rd team. Really good insight into the game, into plays, into whatever storylines are out there, but into the game itself. So back with Sam, we don't know what's going to happen here in the future. We don't know if Ron Rivera and his staff will be retained. As someone from the outside, have you seen enough from him where you'd say, regardless of who's here next year, this kid should be the quarterback?
I really think that that's the case here, right? You're not looking for just a good quarterback. You're looking for a great quarterback, a guy that can take you to the promised land several times throughout the next, let's say, decade. That's the type of guy you're looking for. They should know, or at least they think they should know on Sam Howell. I'm talking the administration, the personnel man, the coaches. Oh, they should, at least they think they should know to the point where we're going to give this young man every opportunity to become a great quarterback for the Washington Commanders. And as he gains experience, we're going to build this team around him. So he's got enough juice, he's got enough talent around him to be able to take us to the Super Bowls, plural, I said, right?
Right.
So that's the mentality that you have to have when you're evaluating a young quarterback like Sam Howell. My opinion is that they're already there. That's what I think from afar just a little bit. But Sam Howell may very well be the future of the Washington Commanders, no matter what happens. Now, look, I'm biased. I think Ron Rivera is a heck of a head coach. I think Eric Bieniemy is a heck of a coordinator. So I would like to see that stay intact and see what they can do in the next 2 or 3 years with this young quarterback named Sam Howell.
Yeah, I think, obviously, as you know, it'd be good for him to stay in the same system for a couple years in a row. Absolutely. Geno Smith, they play Geno Smith this weekend. You coach Geno, I'm sure you kept up with him. What do you think about what he's doing this year?
I coached Geno Smith as a rookie at the New York Jets, where we went 8-8 with a rookie quarterback that we were forced to play from game one. He started all 16 games. Back then it was a 16-game schedule. And this was Geno as a rookie. He would have one really good game, and then he would have a poor game. The next game would be really good, then a poor game, then a good game, and then at mid-season, he had a little dip. He didn't play very well for a few games. And then at the end of the season, he came out of it, and we won 3 of 4 with Geno Smith as a starter, all 16 games. 3 of the last 4, knocked the Miami Dolphins out of the playoffs, which was really rewarding, is all they had to do was beat us at home. We go down there and beat them up like a burro mule, right? That's a rewarding type of feeling coming back on the plane. Then Geno went through a mess.
Right.
Injuries, locker room incidents, all those things. He wasn't quite mature enough, like Sam Howell may very well be, right? Mentally strong. Okay, now he's learned that, and then a decade later last year, he gets his opportunity in Seattle, and I'm very proud of Geno Smith. This is going to be a heck of a game because the Washington Commanders are flying into Seattle, the 12th man, all that. It's a big home field advantage, right? And they're looking, I'm talking about the Commanders, to make a run, make a statement, right? And then the Seattle Seahawks are in sort of the same type of mentality where they're looking forward to the playoffs, but they got to put some wins back to back to back down the stretch here.
And then the very, very last thing with Sam, you brought this up earlier about being surrounded by a good team. You've seen what this defense has done. Do you worry that there's too much on Sam to try and carry this team at a young age? Do they have enough there to help him out?
Hey, look, almost every quarterback, great quarterback, I'm talking Hall of Famer, has sort of been to hell and back, right?
Yes,
and if you go, you got to climb out, right? And then you're scarred up, but they heal. And then you learn, and then the team gets better as you're gaining experience, right? That's where the Washington Commanders and Sam Howell are. He hasn't dropped too many, eggs right in the middle of 50. He hasn't done that yet. But let's anticipate there's going to be a game or two where that does occur, right? And so you can, the past is important to learn from, right? The future is important to plan for. So plan for that just a little bit. I remember with all those rookie quarterbacks that we most of the time were forced to play, right? And sometimes it was a little too early. Talented dudes, right? I wanted to be there when they bleeped up the first time, right? And most of the time, you know what happened? His teammates beat me to the punch, right? And they, hey, we got your back. You know, some of the defensive players go by, hey, we got your back. Well, we're gonna stop them right here. All those things, right? So my last thought is what I said earlier with Sam Howell. He's given hope to the Washington Commanders. It's been so long since they've had a long-term great quarterback. He's given hope. He's given inspiration, right? He's given confidence to his coaches and teammates, and I think most of the fans.
I would definitely agree with that. I think these guys are pretty fired up for the exact same reason you said. So listen, Marty, I appreciate you coming on. Do you want to tell people where they can, I mentioned the 33rd team. Do you want to tell everybody else where else they can see your stuff?
Hey, I'm not real techie, right? But I try to keep it to a minimum. I do a radio show, ESPN, out of Missoula, Montana, Mondays, 5 o'clock Mountain Standard Time. I try to keep the radio stuff to like a couple a week. I do the Montana Grizzlies color on TV. I do 7 of their conference games. I've had a blast doing that. And I only do 7 of the conference games, so it allows me to play a little golf, right? It allows me to get I've got 2 sons that are coaching. One in Ivy League at Columbia. We were out there for the homecoming. One at North Dakota State in Fargo, North Dakota. What a great staff that is, by the way. So we got to go out there. I like to see their teams play at least once a year and maybe more. And then I've had a blast doing the color commentary on the television for Scripps Sports. And so you can catch that on ESPN Plus, or you got to be in Montana, or you got to be in the region where they're playing, like they're playing Portland State. So it'll be shown all over Portland.
That's awesome. And I think my family and I are going out to that region this summer, so I'm looking forward to that. So, hey, Marty,
are you going out to what region?
We're going out to the Wyoming, Montana area. So
you must stop by here.
All right.
And if you want to spend a night or two or a home base from here, we've had several people do that. We're on the west side of the Rockies.
All right.
So the east side, you've got Yellowstone and all that. That's like maybe 3 or 4 days. And then on the west side, you've got a whole different type of situation. You've got Glacier and all of that. So, yeah. So anytime you want to come up and visit, just holler.
All right, Marty.
We're wide open.
I appreciate that, man. I look forward to that. Thanks for coming on and for the insight.
All right, John. Go Grizz.
There you go. That's it for this episode. Thanks to Marty for joining me, and thank you, as always, for tuning in. I'll be back on Friday/Saturday with my keys and a prediction for the Commanders-Seahawks game. I'll talk to you next time.